Welcome back to Bros in the Landfill, the show that took 41 episodes to finally get to this episode. 47
Ugh.
episodes.
No.
No, because episode 5...
No, wait.
Never mind.
And welcome back to Bros in the Landfill, the only show that keeps saying we'll talk about Persona 5 without really having a Persona 5 episode.
All right, that one's pretty good.
Your hosts for this week are Kasum Dizzy
I'll steal your heart and your time and money.
and Tryuji, me, the favorite, the one that everybody loves.
Well, you are both blonde.
Yep, I'm blonde and good looking and totally not a mean-spirited ass that I'm going to save this conversation for later in the podcast. So we're talking Persona 5 this week, which
We're finally doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Dizzy go on Persona 5 rants before, but we've never done an actual Persona 5 episode.
I'd like to say that my Persona 5 rants have kind of revealed to me a sort of dark truth, which is like back in episode 19 with Jack Frostmist and 21 with the Smash Joker rant before he was even in the game. Is like, back then I was like, I don't have a problem. I just went off on a tangent those 2 times. And then by episode like 30, I was like, oh shit, I have a problem. I'm legitimately obsessed. Like, huh.
And in some ways, this should be a good way to help get things out of Dizzy's system. I've definitely been thinking more about Persona 5.
I am in the process of getting a capture card so that I can record Persona 5 footage so I don't have to steal freaking YouTubers for my half an hour long video, and I can finally just do my gigantic Persona review splurge thing and get it all out of my system.
Dizzy, you weren't supposed to admit that you're stealing other people's videos.
No, I admitted that in the description. I said I took these videos without... I provided links, though. I did provide links to every single thing I took.
Well, if you get in trouble, that's on you.
And I posted channel links in the end of the video to the channels that I mentioned. So... I'm not gonna debate one way or another if that was proper or not. I don't know enough about this whole YouTube footage thing, but you gave credit. If people want to cancel you, that's on them, not me. Well, yeah. If they want to cancel me with my 5 subs.
Anyways, so I think while we go get into this Persona talk, I wanted to at least maybe try to build up this opponent that Dizzy's built upon himself. He's become like this hater of Persona 5. Everybody knows Dizzy as the Persona 5 hater who hates Persona 5 more than anybody else. Well, but we should definitely build it up first so we can understand where your points are coming from. I am totally not strawmanning you right now.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I convinced Lunch Billion that I hate Persona 5, which is not at all his fault or hard to see because all I ever do is complain about it. And I mentioned in the video I just released the other day, which is a week ago, at time of posting, that like I have many positives to say about the game, but I've never actually extrapolated on those positives. So let's do this clickbait style. Welcome to the DSY and Try top 10 things we like about Persona 5. Only
Number
10
15.
though. Actually, I was going to say, before we even begin, like, I've mentioned this as a negative before, where I say, like, Persona 5 is a game where I could talk about it for hours and then still come back and say I forgot something. Its positives are actually the same way, too, where I just know once this video is going to be over, I'm going to be, like, upset, because I'm going to say, shit, I forgot to talk about blank, as long as we were praising it.
Well, I mean, we can always do another Persona 5 episode when it's the 2 of us.
I still want to do Shin Megami Tensei Forecast, where we debate 4 versus 4 final.
We need to get Tar to play Shin Megami Tensei 4. It's that good.
Tar, but not Lunch?
I mean, we got to get Lunch to play, but Lunch says the DS is a terrible system and he'll never play it again.
Yeah, I gave up on trying to get Tar to play Persona 4, and I don't know if that was ever made into a video, but we talked about it before the video even started, where I said, like, I don't think Tar would get the same thing out of Persona 4 that I did. I don't think he would I'm thoroughly convinced Tar would play the game, he'd finish it, and he'd say it was fine, and that'd be the end of it. And I'm like, yeah, if it wouldn't really mean anything to you, it'd just be a waste of your time.
I'm not even sure Tar would get through the first dungeon, or at least to the second. Something, like, and this is a positive towards Persona 5 in a way, but Persona 4...
Persona 5 has the best first dungeon.
Well, Persona 4 and before
That's not a Donald Trump joke, you idiots. Sit down. You can say something is the best without referencing him.
Persona 4 and earlier are very unwelcoming games from a very gameplay mechanics center. As RPG series, and this is Shin Megami Tensei in general, a lot of ways.
Uh,
They're not baby's first JRPG. They are, and even so, if you've played JRPGs before, the logic behind a lot of these Shin Megami Tensei games are not like the strategy and logic behind battle is much different compared to other JRPGs, and at least the battle design. And going from something like maybe like Final Fantasy, Pokemon, or whatever to Shin Megami Tensei is not an easy transition.
Shin Megami Tensei
Like,
is kind of a
especially-
slow boil. Like I love
Yeah.
Shin Megami Tensei 4, but the game doesn't quote unquote start really until you get to like Tokyo, and that's after you've done like a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, something
It's like-
I've frequently thought about Shin Megami Tensei is that the first 10 hours can be gruelingly difficult,
Yeah.
then the late game can be incredibly easy. It's where in other JRPGs it's sort of the other way around, where it starts off very easy and gets continuously more difficult.
Yeah. Sorry. I
but-
have a hard time thinking and typing.
Yeah, it's fine. But and Persona 4 and 3 are absolutely this case. They are not easy games to start. The dungeons are not easy. You start off very underpowered. And unless if you're used to Shin Megami Tensei as a series, it can be very daunting, add in the fact that Persona 3 and 4, well, Persona in general has this day-to-day system where it's not like you can just take as much time as you need. Time is constantly passing and you can't stay in the dungeons for too long, and you leave, and then because you can't, and when you leave the dungeons, like more time passes and you lose chances for social links and whatnot, which perpetually make you weaker through the game goes on. Where with Persona 5, it starts off it starts off relatively difficult, but there's a lot more leeway and a lot more mechanics that make the game easier to play and a lot more welcoming to a newcomer. And in a lot of ways, that's probably one of the reasons why Persona 5 became as popular as it did, because it is a very welcoming JRPG.
All right, sorry about that. You can tell me if that post should be in the podcast. But you're talking about first levels and stuff. I'm so sorry. You said such a perfect talk, and then my brain was like, wait, I have to type out this long post. Geez, we're finally doing the Persona episode, and it's the episode where I'm like half asleep. I just want to just
Yeah,
I want to say this too, is that like Persona 5 is a massive ass game. It's 100 hours long, and
Yeah.
like, okay, so I made a video the other day in response to another YouTuber whose name is The Fourth Snake, who does a series called Wasted Potential. And I made a comment in that video where I said the whole game is wasted, is like a big waste of plot potential. It's a word he made up, plot potential, haha.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and that's kind of why it's hard for me to talk about the positives of the game, and also why I'm certain I'm going to forget something, because Persona 5 is so good at almost doing things right, and then it stops doing it. And that's why it's like drives me crazy. I'm like, and
Well,
like,
let me Well, it's like every part of it has a double-edged sword.
yeah.
Where I just said that Persona 5 is definitely the most welcoming Shin Megami Tensei game.
It has
out
the
there.
best intro, but it just gets worse as it goes
Well-
on. Like
well,
the
not-
very
well-
beginning of Persona 5, I would say is absolutely brilliant, and then 2 is the second dungeon, part 2 is
Oh, yeah, it definitely falls
third is
apart. But not-
4 is
But not just on a story like level. Like
no gameplay and stuff too. Dungeons,
Yeah, let's say-
characters.
yeah, the dungeons progressively get worse in design.
Yeah,
The
dungeons.
game becomes perpetually easier through
yeah,
the different mechanics you get through social links.
yeah,
The social links. In fact, one of my biggest criticisms about Shin Megami Tensei 5, Persona 5, is how generous it is at handing out stats and whatnot for your social stats. The game is very generous at handing out social stats,
hmm
especially in social links. So, in Persona 3 and 4, you generally spend the first, like maybe quarter of the game trying to boost up as much of your social stats as you can, so you can so you can manage your time better and spend less time later in the game trying to not filling out your social links. In Persona 5, because you get a lot of the time you end up getting as much social stats through social links as you would just by doing the regular tasks that you would get social stats from. That in a lot of times it feels like you're better off just doing the social links 90% of the time, or just going out and talking with people, because like I was halfway through the game and most of my stats were completely maxed out, and then I was doing social links, and then I was getting tons and tons of like points towards my stats that were going nowhere because I had already maxed them out.
Yeah, some of those social links are kind of funny actually. I remember like the star social link gives you intelligence, but to finish the star social link you need max intelligence, and then you get more
Yeah,
intelligence after you've already gotten max
yeah. It's
intelligence.
like,
What's
well,
the point?
but that's the thing. But to another extent, like to a Persona newcomer,
Uh,
they wouldn't think, oh, I need to max out my social stats as early as possible. They just go through, see that the social links are handing out these stats, and maybe like, oh, maybe I can go do another social link to get more stats here. I don't need to focus on this social link right now. Where in Persona 3 and 4, like if you're a Persona regular, if you've played Persona quite a bit in the past and you've spent time studying the calendar or doing research on how the best manage your time, Persona 5 is kind of a kick in the face to that, and like it can actually make things harder for you if you've played a Shin Megami Tensei, if you've played Persona before.
we were supposed to
Like,
be talking about the positives, right?
well, I know this is like no, but it's no, but here's the thing. It's weird because a great positive of Persona 5 is how welcoming it is to new players. But to some degree, I almost feel like the game is only made for new players. It wasn't made for people who played the earlier Persona games.
It's part of what makes me so frustrated about Persona 5 is that it like everyone says, "Oh, it's the jumping on point." And it's like, yeah, but it number 1, it is like it was made specifically for being the jumping on point. It was made to pander to everyone who did not contribute to the series existing this long. And number 2, it's a jumping on point on a helipad on a skyscraper in a different city. Or to put it another way, Persona 5 is the least Persona game in the franchise.
Oh, it is. But I think that's another thing because you're talking about how
It put all of its
Persona.
eggs in different baskets in different buildings in a completely different city, and then that's why it's so frustrating when people eat up. I played a Persona game. I'm a fan of the Persona series, and it's like, yeah, but like, I mean, it's called 5, but it has nothing to do with it.
Okay, well, I think another thing to
I don't.
mention is how Persona 5 is definitely probably the most exciting game in the series. It's got the most, I'd say, the most thrilling plot. Where
You
Persona
say
4
that,
is a
but you
well,
say that, but like Persona 1 had a like. You were trying to stop the end of the world. Persona 2
no,
had the
no,
most thrilling
no.
plot. You were fighting the Nazis.
Well, I'm talking about by like day by day from the start. And I'm specifically talking about 3 through 5 here because
Well,
3 through 5 is 3 through 5 is a different writer than 1 and 2.
Well, you want to talk about thrills? You're gonna set me off all over again, and like, geez. Okay, like 3 things. Number 1, I don't think we should start the episode over, but I kind of want to because, like, when I go into lead-ins like this, like when we talk about Ultra Sun and Moon or Persona 5 or things of the nature, like the reason why I can kind of segue into Persona 5 from any random episode topic like Smash Brothers or the like is because Persona 5 does so many things. There's so many things that it's easy to lead into, but to examine it as a whole is like trying to untangle Christmas lights, and I'm like, don't know where to start.
Well,
And the second thing is, you talk about the spectacle and shit, and you talk about like how it's a thrilling game. That just reminds me of that comment that was, okay, I think Did You Know Gaming said this in their video, and it was like a comment taken from the director of the game, who was like, we have the Phantom Thief action scenes to get away from the mundanities of life. And I'm like, that sentence right there tells me exactly how much you understand Persona, which is to say you don't.
Well, when I say thrilling, I'm talking about more like on the surface. If you don't think about anything, it is probably the most like there is always something like exciting or dramatic or thrilling happening. In some ways, that's actually, I think, works to the game's benefit because there's downfall because there's not much breathing room. Persona 4 is a very like Persona 4 is a game where
This is interesting to
there's
me.
a lot of, like there's a lot there are thrilling points, but it's a very chill game. It builds up to its more exciting moments, but most of the time it's just people chilling.
Persona 4 makes a good use of downtime,
Yeah,
specifically super downtime. Like,
And
at
what-
the end of the game, things don't... At the end of the game, it feels like the stakes were raised by the world becoming, like, smaller, because, like...
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, by the way, massive spoilers. Like, because...
Massive spoilers are all Persona.
Your whole city that you've, like, spent the entire game in gets, like, totally screwed, and everyone just kind of, like, starts losing their minds, and it's, like...
Mhm.
Like, you know... like you have a sense of dread as opposed to a sense of, you know, like blood rushing thrill.
Well,
You're
the
more
stake-
it
the
plays
stake-
off more fear than it does.
But
I keep cutting you off. I'm
but
so sorry.
But that's fine. Part of it's also that in Persona 4, the stakes feel very personal. Like as the player, it gets you accustomed Like it introduces you to this town, these people, and you really get a sense of what Inaba is. So when Inaba's in danger, you really have this feeling of importance. Like you need to do something to save these people. You actually care. Persona 5 is so wrapped up in its spectacle that it never gives you a reason to care for anybody or anything that's going on in the game. Like I said this in our DMs, but it banks on it being in Tokyo so much that it never really establishes its locale or its location or gives you a reason to care.
It wastes its location.
Yeah, if anything, the only people who would care this much about Tokyo are people who live in Tokyo. But I don't.
It's like when in the end of Persona 5, okay, like again, spoilers. At the end of Persona 5, the city gets totally fucked and is like covered in dinosaur bones for no freaking reason. I will never stop harping on that. What does dinosaur bones have to do with anything? Anyways, getting back on point. This like the final battle happens and you climb up like Shibuya towers on this big thing of dinosaur bones and you go into this gigantic tower and it's all supposed to be epic. I don't care because Shibuya means nothing to me. Versus Persona 4, you go through Magatsu Inaba, this destroyed, warped place that looks just like the place that you spent an entire year in. Your home, your town, your friends, and it's this just distorted thing now, and it's so jarring and like whoa, because it's basically it's a versus of perception. This is how Adachi sees Inaba. He sees it as boring. He sees it as like trash and dull. Meanwhile, you as a player have seen it as this welcoming home in town.
Well, another reason why Persona 4 works really well in that regards is Persona 4 does so much with so little. Yeah. It doesn't need to keep adding. It doesn't need to keep adding things to the game. If anything, most of the game is like most of the world and game is introduced at the start of your time in Inaba, and it never like grows or expands. It's always utilizing everything that's in that world. But
yep, it feels
Persona.
Sorry.
Oh, the stakes in Persona 4 and feel more personal. Where as opposed to something like Persona 3, where Persona 3 in a lot of ways is more of this world-ending threat or this big scary thing that you're trying to investigate. Mm-hmm. The stakes in Persona 3 aren't as personal from the get-go, but it never seems to be trying to, like, I think this goes back to the problem with Persona 5, is it wants to be Persona 3 and Persona 4.
Yeah,
it wants to have this. It wants to have this big Shin Megami Tensei, like, oh, there's this world-shattering, world-ending thing. You got this big evil thing trying to destroy the world.
Persona 5 has no identity of its own because it spends too much time trying to be Persona 3 and Persona 4. And then you have people like me that are saying, we see the glimpses of Persona 5 in this mess that's trying to be things it's not, and we're actually kind of happy with it. We're like, no, be Persona 5. Don't rip off 4. Don't have a villain betrayal plot twist for the sake of it. Don't have the giant world-ending tower for the sake of it. Stop doing this.
So I don't know if this is just me. Like, so earlier I had a thought, and now I've kind of flipped on that thought. Where Persona 5 feels like a first draft of a script. Like, it feels like the first draft. It wasn't.
I've said that so many times.
But now that you're talking about it, it almost feels like that. It's not that it's its first draft. It feels like it had its first draft, and it was stripped clean because, like, Sega or Atlas was like, this isn't enough like your Persona 3. This isn't enough like Persona 4. No one's gonna. Well,
the director himself did change it because of the earthquake thing.
Yeah, well, Persona 5 was supposed to be originally a completely different game. I'm talking specifically about like the inclusion of something like how Mementos is utilized. Oh, yeah. Like the way that the palaces are utilized, because Mementos is very much Tartarus. It is just an analog for Tartarus. The palaces are just
better.
It's I mean, I didn't like Tartarus, but Tartarus was better.
I like Tartarus better because it understood the importance of subtlety.
Well, Tartarus was also thematically very strong within the game. Mementos
is that thing that you go to finish social links.
Yeah.
Okay, look, I admit, I've not watched other people's Let's Plays of Persona 5, but whenever I play Persona 5, I stick Mementos onto the wayside until I need to, because Your social links are always interrupted by objectively evil person saying that he's going to ruin this person's life. And then and because there's never any time limit on these missions, I just stockpile missions until all of my social links are deadlocked.
Well,
and then I go into Mementos and clear
Well,
all of them at once.
Well, you sort of have to if you want to finish all your social links because going to Mementos takes up a full day.
Yeah.
Like it's not optimized very well. The other thing is that Mementos thematically is very weak. The palaces are thematically very weak. So Mementos and the palaces are supposed to be these big. This is the reflection of the human psyche, similar to the dungeons were in Persona 4.
They say it's like that's the thing too, is that they say like Mementos is like the palace of society, and I'm like the whole game, and I've played the game like I've been in the game almost 4 times actually. I admit it's been a while, but let me ask one simple question: what the fuck does Mementos say about society? That it's dark, that we take subway trains. I understand like that metaphor of just you give yourself to the whole, and it's like
that's the entire problem with Persona 5. It wants to say something, but it has something to say, but it says nothing.
That's the thing that keeps driving me crazy. It has things to say, but it never does.
Persona 5 has supposed to have this theme of rebellion, saying and in general, looking at what the director said, it's like the Persona 5 is supposed to be the story about people standing up against the wrongs of society. That's a really good message. But you never do. Well, but
you're always just fighting objectively bad people on the top of the food chain who are just oppressing the lower classes because they're corrupt.
No, but the game is so politically vague and so shallow that it never says you just have these bad people doing bad things, but it never addresses why these people are bad people, in a meaningful way. It never addresses and the palace is the perfect place to address these sorts of things. Mm-hmm. But also, secondly, because it's so vague and shallow, anybody can place any ideology on there because it's just going up against corrupt people. These corrupt people stand for nothing. They're just corrupt people that do bad things.
Yeah. And
part of what really frustrates me with Persona 5, especially looking at our political climate today, is that it's very much saying it's telling, yes, go fight up against these corrupt people, but it never says what is corruption, what makes people corrupt. In some ways, it's like oh yes, you force people to change their minds, but you're never saying what types of people are the people we want to change their minds. It doesn't have anything to say other than change people's minds through a direct, forceful way.
Well, the thing about rebellion to me is that I admit I've not actually heard this argument, but my thought process is the idea, and I have no proof to back this up, but the idea is the existence of the oppression from these bigger people is what you're rebelling against. But my rebuttal to that, my stance to that is that rebellion is itself making a statement. And there's no statements being made in Persona 5. You're just fighting objectively evil people because there's no morals, because what these villains are, what they stand for, why they're corrupt, all of these things are just completely omitted. You basically have a superhero comic from the 90s. Oh, good job, Joker and the Phantom Thieves. We beat Lex Luthor.
So, Dizzy, hear me out on this one.
Yes, okay, sorry.
The biggest problem with this rebellion theme is that the stakes are too personal to the cast. It never feels like, oh, these people we're going to stop these people from doing bad things. We're going to stop them from oppressing. These are leaders. These are most of the time these feel like people that the majority of people don't really care about. They know they're doing bad things, but it's not affecting them, so they don't care. Mm-hmm. Where when I think of rebellion, I think of this is a person who's affecting a large amount of people, and we're going to take down that person because they're affecting a large amount of people. Mm-hmm. The way that the story is written, the way that the character arcs are written is it's focused so much on how that bad person is directly affecting the specific person, where it turns it more into a story of revenge and justice rather than over-toppling a corrupt system. And this can especially be seen in someone like Shido, because the point of Shido, the way that Shido's set up is, oh, he is the person who oppressed the main character. Yes, he's oppressed many people, but the point is not that he's oppressed many people, it's that he's oppressed you, the main character. And you're going after him because of this, not because... Well, you're going after him because he's... In fact, it's actually funny, because you're specifically going after him to prove your innocence, not because you want to rebel against society and make a statement that this person is oppressing people. It's, I need to prove my innocence. And oh, by the way, I guess I'm saving a bunch of people who are oppressed in the meantime. It's like the rebellion was never the focus.
Yeah.
It's always the rebellion is a side effect of of these people doing things for their own personal gain.
That's the thing, is that Persona 5 has it has so many themes it wants to do, but it doesn't know how to focus on them, and so many of these themes are constantly counteracting each other. The Phantom Thief theme ties into the themes of revenge, of you're getting back at these people and kind of doing things on a vigilante basis, but then it has this theme of we want to reform society that absolutely doesn't gel with the revenge motives or the Phantom Thief motives, and also is never actually portrayed. I think you mentioned the influence meter. You're you should have been able to fill the influence meter on your own. You should have, instead of it being story things, you should have actually rallied the people against these corrupt people and done things of that nature.
And there could be different effects to the game depending on the other. But that's part of the problem with that's more because Persona 5 is so bloated of a game that they really couldn't have done anything with it at that point.
Mm.
And I think in general that Persona 5 is just a very bloated game. It has it's this big game full of hot air that with no substance, no substance. There are points of substance within the game, but they're overshadowed by these big, grand spectacles.
Or they're completely just thrown out the window for
no
reason.
And
I'm looking at you, Goro Akechi.
And then the game contradicts itself. Something that actually really frustrates me with Goro Akechi is when I look at Goro Akechi, I'm like, this is what the game could have been. What made Goro Akechi as a character interesting was that he was doing these things not it seemed like he was doing these things not out of a selfish reason, but because he had a strong sense of justice and he wanted to go help people or whatever. Goro, the rest of the cast, they're never doing things out of a sense of justice. Or, I mean, in an extent, yes, they're helping these specific people because they're doing it out of a sense of justice. But it becomes too much. It becomes more of a personal. It's I'm not taking down this person because of a bad person. I'm taking this person down because, I made friends with this person who's being screwed by this person.
Yeah.
It's where the game, I actually sort of feel like it would have, been better if most of the cast members, like in Persona 4, joined after you beat the palaces. If it was never a matter of, because once they join your cast and they're going after, you're going after the bad guys, the stakes in regards to the cast becomes personal rather than a general justice statement. Whereas if they take down the guy and then you have them join your party afterwards, it becomes, they're joining you because you did this just thing rather than a revenge, just turning into a revenge plot.
Yeah. I don't know how to segue into my the thing is, we're talking. Your comments have kind of made me think about stuff and the positives I had about the game, which is kind of weird because now I'm a lot of the positives I have about the game are very surface level, and now it's kind of bothering me too. I do have a few comments though.
Okay. Persona 5 is like a multi-layered cake. The top layer of the cake is incredibly delicious. But as you continue to cut down, you notice that the cake wasn't baked properly.
Well, here's the thing I want to talk to you about, because we're talking so much about this themes of rebellion and revenge and stuff of the system, or stuff of the nature. And it's I never once got a sense of rebellion from the entirety of the game. I mentioned this at the start of the podcast. I said Persona 1 has the best intro, and then I made a stupid political joke about bullshit and stuff. And I was I meant that, and I'm curious about your thoughts on it now, because I was saying Kamoshida's palace, the actual palace, is the best design in the game, as it starts out like a normal medieval kingdom and progressively gets more distorted. There's actual key collecting puzzles. You go to the palace multiple times, and the characterization of the characters at the start of the game is the best. Ryuji being this crazy asshole makes sense at the beginning. The reason I hate him is because he never changes the entire game, but the beginning is when he has no reason to be different, and that's when it feels the most organic, that he'd be so kind of emotionally untapped. And you understand very clearly okay, I don't get a sense of rebellion, but you do get a very good sense of stakes, because Kamoshida wronged every single one of the first 4 Phantom Thieves. He wronged An, Ryuji, Joker, and Morgana. So all of them have a personal investment in it. Again, not really a theme of rebellion, but
not just that. He's wronged many people within the school, and you can see
he wronged Shida.
Kamoshida is the only real example of rebellion within the game, because Kamoshida is this powerful figure within the school that has control over all of them.
Yeah.
Who has negatively affected almost everybody in the school. And that's partially why the first...
The higher-ups are just sucking up to him and giving him more power.
And it's because like he wins games for them. Like, he brings the school reputation through the winnings of the games.
Yeah.
There is no sense of, oh, they're doing this for personal reasons or personal reasons only.
Yeah. And there's even there are even characters in the game, I believe, who say that they knew what he was doing, but they turned a blind eye to it because of the reputation he was bringing the school and because of the games he was winning and how important the volleyball team was. There was a lot more to it than he's just an asshole.
Okay, Daisy, I just realized something. Another great reason why the Kamoshida Palace is so good is this is also before the Phantom Thieves get all up in their ass about their reputation and about fame and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Where after Kamoshida, it's really becomes a lot of, oh, let's find another big target to take down. They're not doing this because they want to do it for just reasons. They're doing it because they want to get exposure as the Phantom Thieves.
Yeah.
But with Kamoshida, it is very much they're not thinking in terms of, oh, we're gonna be big. We're gonna be like they get big because they take down Kamoshida, and then and that's fine if the game actually addresses it.
Because sorry.
Like, the game never actually addresses it. They bring it up, but then it never tells them they're wrong for trying to be famed. In fact, they're even rewarded for going after fame in the end.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that's the thing that kind of drove me crazy is that for as morally charged as this game likes to claim it is, the Phantom Thieves are never once portrayed as wrong. Ever. They're always right about everything. Even when things are like, oh no, were we wrong? Then they get back up and go, nope, we were totally right. Let's presume.
Let me actually use a pretty interesting example. Compare this to Persona 4 when now gets Nanako, when Nanako gets dragged into the mess.
Yeah.
Where like they're getting involved, like they actually, like, when Nanako gets involved and they have to go save Nanako, they have that's when the cast and the main character and everybody is like, maybe we were wrong for going forward with all this. Maybe we were wrong for getting our noses in this case. We put our loved ones in danger. Nanako could have died, and in the bad ending, Nanako does die.
Yeah.
It is a very the game tells you it is very much of a possibility that you were wrong for going after this. Like, for
you get the threatening letters. Like, Dojima is like, "What the hell are you doing?" I was gonna say, like, one of my favorite scenes in Persona 4 is the scene where, like, the cast, like, your whole group gets split down the middle as, like, they're saying, "Let's kill, like, the guy who we think has been killing all these people." That's a huge kind of, like, thing to talk about. And like, what's really interesting is, like, who is proposing what? Like, of all characters, Naoto Shirogane is the one that proposes the idea in the first place. Naoto, the person who was level-headed, always thinking about this stuff, which just goes to show how shaken she is by everything, and how much her emotions are affecting her.
But that's what makes Persona 4 so thematically strong, because the entire theme of Persona 4 is to search for the truth, to put your emotions by the wayside and actually try to find justice and find the truth. And that is the most realist example, like, and most poignant example of the game's theme within Persona 4. And in Persona 5, we get nothing like that.
In Persona 5, you have a bunch of people who say that they're right, and then they're right.
Well, the closest thing we get to to the thieves being wrong is when you get captured because of Goro's betrayal. But even in the end, like, oh, that was actually all part of plan.
I hated that scene so much because the Phantom Thieves up until that point are portrayed as being incompetent idiots, and then all of a sudden they hatch a master plan to catch Goro Akechi that is so ridiculously convoluted, and it goes off without a hitch. And I'm like, really? The people who, when they were being called out on the internet and had, like, this huge problem, their solution was to wake up a 14-year-old and have her solve the problem for them. The people who, when they were looking for a drug lord, their solution was to just get kidnapped.
Okay, hear me out, Dizzy.
Great!
That plan was so convoluted that only idiots could get it to work.
Well, it's a good thing Akechi was an idiot too.
Yeah, no, I just that scene was like literally the point where I'm like, yep, this is a terrible story. Like, all faith in this game has completely gone to the trash.
You know, that's actually tragic, because the point where all my faith went into the trash was during the end credits. I I say all my faith. My faith was slowly diminishing the whole game, but I didn't completely get sick until the ending when I was like, fuck this.
My faith was diminishing at the point where the game started out with the in media res using this narrative.
That was so stupid.
Like,
I thought they were playing up to something, but all they do is basically the whole thing is wasted.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I'm not inherently against in media res or using those sort of like narrative framing devices of someone in the middle of the story telling events at the back of of it going on.
Hi, this is me. You're probably wondering how I got into this situation.
Yeah, I actually quite like that when it's done right. It doesn't work for Persona because Persona is a day by day life simulator, and the number one way to pull someone out of a game where you're supposed to be the main character is to imply that everything that you're about to do has no like importance because it's going to lead up to this very specific moment.
It's also because the guy who made the game said that we have to be Phantom Thieves to get away from the boring life. Let's not think about the boring life. Let's not think.
That's not thinking. No, Persona 4. Like, actually, here's something I was also thinking about. Persona 5 is a game that doesn't know how to handle agency.
Persona 5 is a game that absolutely does not know how to handle agency. All of the confidants, well, not all of them, but most of the confidants are like totally fucked because like they're doing so well of building up this character and establishing their personality, but then when it comes down to like the really serious thing, they're like, oh crap, I can't do anything. I'm totally deadlocked. And then you have to go in and solve their problem for them. And it's like, who needs character growth when you can just make someone else do your dirty laundry?
Where with Persona 3 and 4, it's the opposite case where it's like the reason why their problems are solved is because you're a friend to them.
Yeah.
Because you talk with them and you help them realize their problems because they haven't been able to see things in a certain way. Persona 5, it's like, well, I can't do anything about this. Time to go brainwash someone into being a different person.
Yep.
Because that's what Persona 5 does. You're brainwashing people to realizing they're wrong.
I think like there was only 2 cases where I was actually like there's 2 cases in the entire game where I was like kind of weird on the feeling. And first one was, I believe his name was Shota. It's been a while, or the get smoked kid, the give it the hat, where like I still wasn't fond of it because the solution was still just brainwash his mom to be nice. But he did sort of learn on his own that he was overstepping his bounds, and you did get a better understanding of his character. I wish there was a better kind of progression, but you know, his social link was fine. And then the other one was like, what was the other one actually? People mention like people keep saying like Kawakami best girl. The people are like split between Kawakami and Haru, which I absolutely don't understand. Kawakami's social link is so weird to me because she doesn't really have an arc at all. Hers is a character study, not a character growth. You get a better insight into her world views. You get a better insight into her world perceptions, how she sees, why she acts the way she does. She doesn't really grow and change as a person, and that's fine because it doesn't seem like that was the intention. So I'm still unhappy that the solution to her problem is just, and then a random guy, high schooler, goes and just magics everything away. I will never be happy with that as a solution, but at least with her, it doesn't feel like her arc fell flat because the most integral part of the freaking arc of her overcoming her own problem was solved by someone else because it didn't feel like there was an arc period. It's just, this is your homeroom teacher, and this is your homeroom teacher more specifically. And I'm like, okay.
And she's also a maid that you can date.
I absolutely do not understand why people like Haru. She never does anything.
So
are we going to talk about the positives yet?
Okay, so actually, I want to bring up a positive. Like, I think since we're talking about the negatives of the like within the confidants and whatnot, one confidant that like I actually quite think worked for what the story was trying to go for, or the themes of the story, or the mechanics, was the son.
Oh, the son was great, and he didn't have a part where you had to beat an objectively evil person to make his life better.
Well, yeah, that's actually sort of funny because that's, if anything, that would have made the most sense to do so. Because what makes the son interesting is because he's in a political position. He's in a very similar position of the Phantom Thieves.
Yeah.
Where he was defamed. He was He's trying to build himself back up in this political world.
He's the only asshole whose
And-
name I can remember. It was Tora.
Yeah, and like
Because he had a
the
name
thing-
worth remembering.
like Tora, like actually felt like he was made for Persona 5. Like
Yeah.
his story works thematically with Persona 5 because it's not just a matter of like it's not even this sense of rebellion. It's a sense of this is a person who society has left behind, or society has like
has shunned and defamed. They won't listen to a word he says. They're like, you've wronged us, and now you're dead to us. And he's like, but at the same point too, he's, despite having been thrown out by society, he's actually the one who is changing with the times. He's the one who's advocating for the Phantom Thieves and stuff, and talking about like the youth and the people who are growing up and the next generation and things of that nature. But it's like too little, too late, pal. You fucked up once, and we won't give you a second chance. And he's like, no, like you gotta give people a second chance, not just me.
Like Toru is one of the best parts of Persona 5.
He's like, stick to your beliefs. Like that's the thing is too, is they keep offering him outs. Like, just abandon all of your beliefs, come with us, we'll give you a really good position in Congress. And he's like, piss off. And also, this is Japan. We don't, or do we have a Congress?
Well, they have a national diet, which is
We have a
similar to
national
Congress.
diet.
But that's sort of like what I see, and this is like I think this is what also Dizzy gets frustrated. It's like there are some really great things in Persona 5.
There are some really
Toru-
great things.
Like Toru's confidants is like one of my favorite confidants in Persona in general.
And you know
Like
what? I was gonna say, you know what kind of drives me crazy about like
What?
Sun stuff, and like something that I've been very unhappy about in confidant relationships.
Mhm.
It's like when you're doing these confidants and stuff, you have like the benefit system. You get to rank 1 or rank 2 or rank 3 or rank 4. You get these special benefits and shit. And then it's like, okay, I'm not gonna lie to you. One of my favorite confidants was the devil. Her name was Oda, I believe. I really liked her. I mentioned that I liked her, and everyone says like, "Oh, I didn't bother with the devil. She had like terrible social link benefits." And I was like, "What about her, the character?" And I have to admit, I was the same way with Sun, where I was like, "I never do demon conversation, so I'm not gonna bother with the Sun." And then I did the Sun on a second playthrough, and I was like, "Holy shit! I love this character."
Actually, but it's also sort of funny. Think about the skills. A lot of the time, the skills you gain from the confidence don't make sense. Like,
Yes.
or like mechanic, especially if we're talking about all the benefits you get from the shogi player or the chess
Yeah.
player. Like the skills you get from her don't make sense in regards to.
A lot of them are really
Um,
basic techniques, honestly, and
yeah,
some of them are just
yeah.
like beat enemy with all-out attack for more money. How does that work?
Yeah, where with Toru, it makes sense. You talking with a public speaker, a professional public speaker, you working with him, you learning from him, you get
Yeah.
better at talking to the demons. It makes sense.
Akira should be a freaking genius, considering like the people that he talks to.
Yeah, I
but-
know.
and he never really ever displays that.
Well,
Did I ever
think the
mention
other-
like how much
another-
I hate the Wheel of Fortune?
Oh yeah, the Wheel of Fortune. The Fortune social link was really bad, and I really.
The Wheel of Fortune
I-
social link made me so angry for a reason that I don't think anyone A thought about or B even thinks is that big of a deal, which is that like her arc is robbed from her. Where
Yeah.
like you talk to her and she realizes that what she's doing is wrong and she has to stand up for herself, and then that fails because you have to solve her problems for her by beating up the objectively evil person. Don't stand up for yourself, guys. Let someone else take care of your problems.
But if you want to max out everybody's social links, you have to max her out first.
I always max her out last, actually.
Yeah, that's funny.
I literally never understood what her benefits were or how they
Well,
worked, and I never
okay,
used them.
So and on Persona, like in Persona in general, like,
Yeah.
and this is the same thing with like.
It's the
with
shrine from
mechanic of-
Persona 4, right?
Yeah. So basically, it increases your the points towards a certain social link. So if you don't have enough points to continue the social link,
Well, I
it
mean,
can get.
there's another way to maximize the points you get from social link. It's called save before you start a social link, and if the music notes that come out of their head don't have stars around them at the end of the social link, you reload your last save and do it a second time.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody's gonna bother doing that, but at the same time, I think that's the sort of thing that's good on like a second playthrough, but on the first playthrough, that's not really. It can be
Yeah.
a bit of immersion breaking.
Well, the shrine did save my social link with Kanji Tatsumi in Persona 4. I got him to 9 and the game was almost over, and I'm like, gotta pray at the shrine, gotta pray at the shrine, gotta pray at the shrine.
Speaking of social links, something like if we want to talk about like Persona 3, 4, and 5,
Mm.
like each game handles its social links very differently. Like Persona 3 is a game about death, and a lot of like most of its social links revolve around like
Characters, well, they revolve.
yeah,
It's not all of them have to do with death, but
well,
all of them have to do with loss.
yeah, it's lost in this existential crisis of some
Yeah,
extent.
or fear of
And
loss, even.
yeah, so Persona 3 had like is very thematically strong about that.
Yeah.
Persona 4's I actually feel like Persona 3 still has the best social links in Persona in general.
Yeah.
I feel like that's
Well, I admit I'm biased because 3 is my favorite.
I don't even like Persona 3 is not even my favorite. Persona 4 is my favorite, and I still say Persona 3 has better social links than 3 and 5. So I'll give you that one, Dizzy.
I'll say this about Persona 3 social links: it wouldn't be until Persona 4 that they would fix the girl system, because 3 had a little bit of a hiccup that made things a little bit frustrating, where you could only social link with one girl at a time, or else all the other girls you're social linking with get mad at you, and then your social link gets kind of messed up. So that was a
Ouch.
bit of a misstep. In Persona 4, they fixed that by adding in like the girlfriend system, where then your girlfriend will get mad at you if you social link with other girls, but you can social link with a bunch of girls at once without them getting mad at
I
you.
can't wait for the Royal to come out so I can be a playboy and just date everybody.
And then Persona 5 fucked up the girlfriend system by making it completely inconsequential.
Yeah,
because
that was really
ranked Persona 5 fucked up girlfriend system because it made it so formula. It's like you'll always date the girl at rank 9, and then rank 10 will be in your bedroom where they will tell you what happens if you didn't date them, and then they'll say, "Hey, we're dating now. That's cool." And I'm like,
that.
And I'm like, hey, remember Persona 4 where you can date people at different intervals of your social link, and their social link can dramatically change depending on if you are or not dating them?
But I'm gonna say this. I'm just waiting for Persona. I'm just waiting for Persona 6 to have inclusive options.
I'll say this about like, God, I don't know if I want to talk about this because I'm pretty sure once I start talking about it, I won't stop. But I was gonna say, like, do I want to go off on my thoughts on how they should handle social linking in 6, or am I gonna go off on my thoughts on, like, am I gonna try to bring this back to Persona 5?
Let's bring this back to Persona 5.
Okay, well, as long as we're talking about romance, can I just say that as long as we brought up 3, 4, 5, and romance and stuff, and this will be a real spicy hot take, maybe. I gotta admit, I don't watch a lot of people's Persona YouTube videos because most of them are just people sucking its dick, and
Of course.
I admit that's unfair of me. I do have a bias, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who did really fair analysis of Persona 5. I don't know if anyone has mentioned this, but to me personally, Ryuji and An have the best chemistry of any of the 2 original partner characters in the Persona 3, 4, and 5 games. I'm serious. Like, Junpei and Yukari, they get along as friends and they have, like, a good thing. Chie and Yosuke get along, like, pretty well. You understand there's a friendship, and I like that. But I genuinely think Ryuji and An should have fucking hooked up at the end of the game.
They should have fucking fucked.
I don't know if they should have fucked. They are high schoolers, but
I'm
I am serious, and I'm like, and that's another case where I'm like, of course they can't hook up because you have to be able to date on, or else you're gonna piss off somebody. But I'm like,
I guess
someone fucked up by accidentally making the best goddamn romance.
Yeah, well, I guess it's to some degree it's a similar thing with Kanji and Naoto, where Kanji and Naoto have real chemistry, or like at least. Like, you can see that there's a potential for a relationship there, but yeah, you can still date Naoto in Persona 4. So you can.
I got a sense of friendship, but I never got a sense of. I got a sense that Kanji was into Naoto, but I never got a sense of reciprocating feelings more than Naoto saw Kanji as a friend.
Well, I think
the anime really changed that though. The anime really kind of set them up as like, oh, they're in love.
Well, I think I'm part of the difference with Persona 4 game with Naoto showing feelings is that she's not really the type of person to really. Well, she doesn't really understand who she is, and what her own feelings are, what she's allowed to feel. Mm-hmm. Like she's so focused on this career as a detective that she wouldn't allow herself to feel emotions, and that's part of That's also partially why I'm not a big fan of the you can date Naoto, because it doesn't really make sense within her character arc, and it kind of comes out of left field.
I don't actually know how to date Naoto, because when I social link with her, the option never came up at all.
Oh no, it's never. It doesn't ask you if okay, let me ask this. There's a
Well,
like,
four
and this
four
is
was a little bit more subtle than ask to be
yeah,
their girlfriend.
yeah, yeah. No, there's a point where you can ask her like, well, she asks you if you prefer her as a guy or a girl, and if you respond to her as a girl, it gives you like you say I prefer you I prefer calling you she, then it gives you the option to date her from there.
I think was there a third option that says whatever you're fine with? Because
Yeah, but what
I
and if you
think
say
I
whatever
yeah I think I picked that, and then
yeah yeah
that would explain what
you have to say that you prefer her as a she, like you prefer Naoto as a she
I
to
have
get to
to.
the point of dating her.
I have to admit that I actually kind of forgot because I
Yeah.
only ever social linked with Naruto once because I never got my intelligence that high a second time.
Ouch. Yeah, no,
Ugh.
yeah, that but yeah, we talked about stats in Persona 4 because Persona 3 and stats number 5, but 3 and 4 it's really hard to get your stats all the way up. There's a lot of time investment to do so, and but then you have 5 making it
You
so
gotta
easy
eat
that
you gotta eat a whole bunch of beef bowls in 4. You just gotta keep down in those bowls.
yeah, where in Persona 5 it's like they just hand out stats like it's nothing and you're maxed out and you basically wasted like if you've spent any time like maxing any stats out early on, you wasted time and you're not going to finish your social links whatsoever.
Well, I was gonna say like I maxed out my stats early on, and then I just spent the entire rest of the game social linking, and I was like, no, I finished almost all of the social links, so I guess it
I mean,
really depends on how you play your time.
Well, I mean, I finished most of the social links. I think I had like 2 or 3 not finished, and that
Yeah.
was mainly because of the bullshit near the like where you basically stop.
Sakura couldn't finish Yusuke, and let me tell you from experience, Sakura, you didn't miss anything.
Yeah. No, I didn't finish Kawakami because I didn't realize that when you stop going to school, you can't max her out anymore.
Yeah, what's his face? Tora mentioned that like he sends you a text if you take too long to finish Sun, where he says, "Hey, we should probably finish up talking soon because soon they're not going to let me talk to you anymore."
Yeah, like Persona 5, it doesn't like especially if
Isn't
you're not
that
if
so
you're going,
ironic that Persona 5 like nails so many small things but gets the big stuff wrong, and then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, it also kind of fucks up some small stuff.
But I also think this goes back to something you were saying earlier. It's like you're talking about like people doing analysis of Persona 5. Is if you take any chunk of like individual chunk of Persona 5, there is a lot to analyze in it and a lot to good to see in it. It's the fact that a lot of these small
Except for the
chunks
very
don't
end.
work. Yeah, of course, but it's a lot of
Sorry,
these
it's
small chunks.
just DSY cynicism.
A lot of these small cherry picked chunks within the game work in a small isolated section, but when taken into consideration of the big picture, fall apart. It's like you have like pieces of a puzzle that are painted amazingly, then you put it in the rest of the puzzle and you realize it just doesn't fit in the puzzle. Or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like
This was supposed to be about positives, right?
yeah. Well,
what is this shit that we're doing an episode about Persona 5 and we're supposed to be talking about like the positives, and I'm like, hey, I've been sitting on all the things I wanted to talk about this whole time because I don't have a good lead in.
Well, it comes back to the fact that every positive of Persona 5 comes with a caveat.
Exactly.
Whenever you bring up
I mentioned how much I like An and Ryuji's like relationship. I never even got to go into detail.
Yeah. But I think that's also part of the problem with Persona 5 being such a large game. Where something like Persona 4 and 3 are both 60-hour JRPGs. But in general, there's not much to in a lot of ways they're very simple stories. You can talk about each individual part in relative depth without going into long tangents.
You say the word simple, and then I start thinking, oh shit, wasn't I going to talk about how I compared Persona 5 to Devil May Cry 5?
Oh, I want to hear this one.
Oh, you want to hear this one?
Yeah.
Okay, well, geez, sorry. There's like a million things. I was playing Devil May Cry 5, and I had like a million thoughts while playing it about like, oh god. Like, they're both the 5th installment of games in their series, but it's like, okay. Jeez, where do I even start? So you have like Ryuji, who I refer to many times as not Ryuji. You have Nero, who I refer to many times as Ryuji, but good, because he has like the exact same character and personality as Ryuji, but he's portrayed actually well. And then you have your series. It's like you're like really sort of standard. Like here's the heroes, here's the villains, here's the story, beat the bad guy, and all this stuff. And I'm like, Devil May Cry 5 is a super simple game, but it's not basic. It's not like brain dead. And I'm like, and that's what I love so much because it's like when we were talking with Lunch about like the Captain Marvel shit. And I was talking about walks, and Lunch is like introducing Captain. He said it sarcastically. He was like introducing Captain Marvel, what with her really strong character and stuff. And I'm like, Devil May Cry 5. I now love to point to because I'm like, it does things really well without trying to be this massive grandeur. Here's your characters. You understand who your characters are. You like your characters. They do things that are in character. They have a bad guy. You know I don't want to fight the bad guy. It doesn't try to be this deep psychological character study. You know who these people are, and by the end of the game, like, pretty much none of them have changed. None of them have had real arcs, and they didn't need to. They weren't trying to, and you don't really care. Like this is Nero. We spend the game establishing who Nero is. We know who he is. We know how he acts. We know why he acts that way, and that's fine. We don't need super complex characters and deep introspectives. We just need characters and a story. Characters to care about.
Dizzy.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Would Persona 5 bother you so much if it wasn't Persona 5? Like, if it was
it would
Persona...
bother me less, but it would still bother me absolutely because there's a lot of shit in 5 that's just bad no matter what. But it's 5 is so disrespectful to the Persona 5 is so disrespectful to the numbering because despite being the 5th game in the series and the supposed jumping on point, it's got shit nothing to do with Persona.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying. It's like I feel like okay.
I would still be mad at Persona 5 if they dropped the title Persona 5.
Okay, that's not what I'm trying to say. That's not what I'm. Okay, I should have rephrased this.
Okay.
I think if Persona 5 wasn't Persona 5, like if it was like maybe Persona spinoff or just another Shin Megami Tensei game spinoff.
Yeah.
And was its own identity not tied down by the Persona brand?
Yeah.
I think because I feel like some of the biggest writing I feel like the biggest writing flaws around Persona 5 is it's trying too hard to both be a Persona game and its own thing.
And then they made Smash Joker, where it tried so hard to be an advertisement.
Yeah, I know.
I'll never stop griping about Smash Joker.
But
Fuck him.
Like it wants to be Persona, but it doesn't have the psychological backing. Like if it was a Persona game, all like the psychological. Okay, if it wasn't.
There's the thing about that.
It's like if it wasn't a Persona game, do you think you and I would care so much about it not having the deep psychological like Jungian analysis that Persona games tend to have?
Well, the thing about if Persona 5 wasn't a Persona game is really kind of difficult to talk about, honestly, because, like, Persona, I've said this many times, Persona built its very identity and its core in these deep psychological stuff and its social, like, commentary and all these things about, like, psychology and all that stuff. That is where its identity comes from. So you pick up a Persona game, that's what it should be about. But if it wasn't attached to the Persona license, something else comes to play in my mind, where if Persona 5 wasn't Persona 5 to begin with, it wouldn't be trying to be 3 and 4 and could then go on to actually have an identity of its own.
Well, exactly.
And then it wouldn't. And then it's like, well, then we're talking about a hypothetically completely different game, and I can't judge a hypothetical game.
No, but that's my point. I feel like Persona 3. Okay, Persona 1 and 2.
I'll say this.
Sorry. Okay, Persona 1 and 2 are intrinsically linked games. There's difference in the gameplays, but when you look at the stories, they're told in a very similar way. Mm-hmm. 3 and 4 are intrinsically linked games. They are told in a very similar, special way. Now, Persona 5, weirdly enough, like, I'm not even just saying that, like, oh, maybe it should have been it shouldn't have been a Persona game. Like, they've had the framework where they could have really changed things up without it being as offensive as it is.
Yeah.
But for the sake of things, Persona 5 didn't have to be Persona, like a sequel to Persona 3 and 4. It could have just been a spiritual successor within the Persona line.
If Persona 5 was given more freedom to be itself, I probably would have less gripes of it. But at the same time, if you just dropped the Persona name, but you kept the characters as they were, and you kept the twists as they were, and things as they were, I definitely would still have a lot of problems with it.
Oh, like, yeah, but
one-dimensional villains will always be bad to me. Unlikable protagonists will always be bad to me.
But the point of the matter isn't. I feel like Persona 5's biggest
detriment is its legacy.
It's its legacy, because there is so you talk about like Devil May Cry. It's like like there's no deep psychological analysis. There's no like it's these fun characters. Like they don't really change much for the story. That's sort of the point. Persona 5 comes off as like this thriller action movie that like there's not really supposed to be this big character thing. It's supposed to be this big flashy fun spectacle.
Yeah.
But because it's Persona, it's not allowed to be.
Well, the thing about that too is it does the spectacle so poorly.
Well, that's because it's a Persona game.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing too. It's bogged down, but I think it's bogged down by its own legacy. Ironically, it's saddled with Persona rather than having Persona as its identity.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I mentioned Devil May Cry 5, I should probably stress it's like Devil May Cry 5 is like an Indiana Jones movie. You know who these people are, and if you don't know who these people are, you learn who they are through the story. It's an adventure. It's not a character study. And like it's fine that Nero doesn't change during the game because like it wasn't a story about Nero and his deep psychology. It was a story about just like Nero, Dante, and V like teaming up to fight the villain, and this is just the shit that happens.
Well, in some ways, Persona 5 is not really a story about characters. It's a character. Well, it's not a story about developing
story
characters.
About anything.
Yeah, but it's in some ways it seems like it's trying to be more of a character study. I mean, it's more of a political message of, oh, this is what, it's a good thing to go change things. But it's more of a character study of what would happen if these people who were beat to the curb had gained these abilities to be able to go and change society. That's what Persona 5 at its core is about. It's a character study.
Wasn't that a YouTube movie?
I don't know.
I swear there was like a YouTube movie about like a bunch of teenagers who got superpowers, and then one of them decided he was going to be evil with his powers, and they had to stop him, and when it was brand new, a lot of people were like, wow, that's so interesting. And then as time went on, they're like, wow, that's so one-dimensional. And
well, because something doesn't need to... Okay, something doesn't need to be deep unless it's Persona.
Well, it really depends.
Well, okay, so I'd actually like to compare, like something I want to move into for this, like, final half is, like, I kind of want to compare Persona 5 to Shin Megami Tensei 4.
But before we get there, I wanted to mention, like, Haru Okumura versus Nico, I don't remember her last name, where it's like, people really like Haru, and I don't understand why, considering Haru never did anything, even though so many things could happen to her. Like, I
was initially intrigued by Haru, but as the story got on, I'm just like, what's your point?
Haru absolutely should have been the traitor. That would have fit so much fucking better. Oh god, I never talked about the personas! But I was going to say, anyways, is that Haru is a character in the game who has basically no agency to anything, despite the fact that she absolutely should. She's a member of the Phantom Thieves. Her father was fucking murdered by the main antagonist, and, like, she's just lost in this world. Has no idea where she's going, and then she never addresses any of it, acts mostly lighthearted and bubbly the entire game, and never seems to get serious and never seems to really do anything, and much like every other character in the game, she flips back and forth between two different personalities.
I mean, she doesn't do anything Persona Q2, so it's a problem with her character.
She doesn't do anything, and I'm like, and I bring her up in comparison to a character in Devil May Cry 5 whose name is Nico, who is like Nero's friend, who is the she's the bus driver. She drives around and stuff, and she contextually speaking, in the grand scheme of things, she doesn't do anything. She never fights the main antagonist. She never even sees the main antagonist. She doesn't fight demons. She just kind of talks to characters. But in the scenes that she has, and the way that she drives her bus, and the things that she does, and like she exudes personality. She is full of it. After like, sorry, am I being too loud?
Oh no, it's fine.
So, like after 3 scenes or 2 scenes with her, or even after the very first scene where they're like arguing, she's smoking, she like shit talks Nero shit talks back and stuff. She kills a demon by running it over and then like burns him with a cigarette. Like you're like, oh, I know her. She's oh, I know her. She's Nico, the badass. Like she earns her status in like 5 minutes. And it's like,
do you know what?
I know who Nico is from less time with her than Haru, who I spent like 3 playthroughs with, and her complete social link. Who the fuck are you, Haru?
Like, okay, so you know what makes Haru even more insulting of a character? Okay, so I said earlier that Persona 5 has a problem with agency.
Yes.
And part of this comes back to how in general, the palaces are all about like resolving the palaces are a way of giving the characters agency or giving them agency back into their lives because someone is oppressing them or they're trapped or whatever. Like they have no agency in their lives, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What makes Haru so insulting, and this is part of the agency problem, is despite getting her agency back, she does nothing with it.
Yeah.
And in fact, she's just like, oh, I guess I'm just going to go run my company anyways.
I guess I still have to be married to that asshole. I guess I still have to work for the Phantom Thieves. Oh,
yeah,
well.
It's like she never does anything for herself, and it's never addressed.
Yeah. She never does anything. Even in her social link, she just kind of decides to leave the company and then grow plants. And it's like, Haru, like, do something.
Or like
have a point. And what's so frustrating is that, like, let's compare Haru to someone like actually, let's just talk about Haru and herself. It's like she has so much weight on her, and none of it amounts to anything. I mentioned before, I said, like, Haru absolutely feels like I am 100% certain of this. Not 100% certain of this, that was an exaggeration, but I'm like, I cannot get this idea out of my mind that Akechi was not supposed to be the traitor. It was supposed to be Haru, and then at the last minute they said, nope, make it Akechi. Who cares? And then as a result, they, like, ripped away the traitor role, gave it to Akechi, and left Haru with nothing. And, like, they're like, what do we do with Haru? We don't have time. The game ships tomorrow. Okay, fine. We'll do nothing.
Make her. She'll grow plants.
She'll grow plants. Or maybe she was always supposed to grow plants. And I'm like, you have so much buildup for that. Haru fits the role for traitor so well, and then she does nothing with it.
Yeah. Like, they didn't even use her as a red herring. Like, if at the very least, if she was a red herring and did something afterwards, that would have been.
Well, no, she was a red herring because they see the black mask and they're like, oh, a black mask. And Morgana's like, nope, she's totally not the traitor.
Well,
there's your red herring.
I argue that because they built up Makoto as the red herring. Like, through that whole section of the game, they're like, oh, is the Makoto tell Sai Nijima or something? Like, Makoto seems really, like, there seems something to be up with Makoto. They're focusing so much on Makoto and Sai at this point that, like, and granted, yes, it's Sai's her sister, but it made sense to make Makoto a potential red herring because of her relationship to Sai.
Well, the thing about that is I couldn't suspect Makoto because in Goro Akechi's very first scene, he admitted to being the traitor. So
I mean, that's okay.
I admit a lot of the smaller points were lost on me because I saw them for what they were.
But that goes back to the whole, like, how poorly the framing device of the in-media res framing devices, because it prompts you to look for a traitor from the beginning. If you didn't know there was a traitor, Goro's comments would have flew over our heads on a first playthrough. That's something that you can go back and be like, oh yeah, he did say something suspicious. Oh, I didn't see that because of blah blah blah. But since you're looking for a traitor, it becomes incredibly more obvious that he is the traitor.
You know, that's true, because I admit you can only play the game for the first time once, but it's like, yeah, I did notice that where he's like, oh, I thought someone was mentioning pancakes. And I was like, you're the traitor. But if I wasn't told to be on the lookout for a traitor in the first place, I might have not picked up on that, actually. I would have been, I might have not even thought about that.
You may have thought it was weird, but you wouldn't have thought of him as someone who was going to betray them. Like, there are plenty of answers that could have been, like, he could have been...
I think I wouldn't have thought about it at all is the thing. He probably would have come up to something about pancakes, and I would have been like, whatever. But because I was looking for a traitor, he's like, hey, did someone mention pancakes? You're the traitor.
Yeah, because...
I hate... Akechi just drives me crazy. Fuck talking about the positives of Persona 5. Someone explain to me how the fuck Morgana works. So Akechi can hear Morgana because he's been in the cognitive world for 2 years, but he never heard the cat talk. And An's explanation is that if you hear Morgana talk in the cognitive world, then that means that you then have the perception that he can talk, so you can understand his voice. But Akechi never heard him talk, and Sai was in the cognitive world, but she can't hear Morgana talk. And there's the argument of, oh, they weren't in there for very long, but then Akira and Ryuji were in the cognitive world, and they found Morgana, but they didn't know he was a cat or that he could leave, and they heard his voice before they saw his body, so that had nothing to do with mental perception. How do you work, cat?
I just had a thought, and I sort of disagree with it again, but I don't think the writer for Persona, like the Persona writer, is capable of writing these large, convoluted stories. But then I took a step back. I don't think anybody is capable of writing a large, convoluted story like Persona 5 in the amount of time that they were given to write it.
I'll challenge
Like-
you on that because, well, on the amount of time they were given. Because I keep saying Persona 5 could have been really, really good without changing very, very much, which is part of why Royal scares me, because I was saying Persona 5 has a lot of good that it could have done that it just didn't do.
Mhm.
Royal looks like it's gonna throw everything out, and I'm like,
I'm
no,
still
capitalize on
worried.
that potential.
I'm still worried it's not going to change anything but the end.
If it doesn't change anything but the end, that will also be very bad. But I'm like,
Yeah.
you have so much you could be going for. You have so many points that you've started but have not finished. And I'm like, finish those points. You raise a lot of questions. You just don't have any answers for them.
Okay, but my point more so is that, like, because of how bloated Persona 5 is, I don't want them adding another chapter with another dungeon with a new character. I want
Because
them,
it'll just probably be more of the same.
it's gonna be more. It tells you where their focuses are. If this was we're gonna release an updated version of Persona 5 and we're gonna clean up the plot a bit, it's gonna have a re-edited script, refocus things. Like, people would buy that regardless. People aren't gonna adding a new dungeon with new characters doesn't inherently make it a worthwhile purchase. The people who enjoy Persona 5 are going to buy it anyways.
I'm gonna have to buy it because I refuse to be omitted from the conversation.
I know.
Oh
But it's
god. I just keep thinking about shit now. And I'm like, I know you want to talk about Shin Megami Tensei 4, and I'm like, I want to help you get to that, but I'm also like I'm on the pain train, and I'm like,
LOL.
hey, while we're talking about like shit that Persona 5 does poorly, it's like your entire message. What the fuck was it? And it's like, oh, can people change society? And like the main antagonist, who, spoiler alert, is like, he's Igor, or he's pretending to be Igor, and he's like, a great calamity is coming and I want you humans to stop it, and it's all a game and shit. And then the main characters beat Shido, and they beat all these guys, and they beat the guy's chosen one, but then he just decides to fuck the planet anyways. So
Yeah.
and she's like, it was an unfair game, and I'm like, what? And I'm like, it was an unfair game for the stupidest of reasons. Why did you set us off on this mission in the first place and give us the powers to even get as far as we did if you intended to just pull the rug? Like, is it... I guess it's because you're bored. I guess that's the reason. But it's like... First of all, that's a stupid reason. And second of all, like, how did you even do this? And, like, what is the point? And it's like, and then the worst part is, like, you're talking about all this social reform shit, about, like, changing people's hearts, and then you have objectively evil demon guy as your final boss, who has the power to make people not care.
Well, that's sort of
Free will is a myth.
But that's sort of where it comes back to with the game being so politically vague. It's said the game Persona 5 is saying, oh, it's good to be political, it's good to want to go change society, but it never says what to change society to other than not corrupted. But what one's answer of corruption, like one person's answer of corruption is going to be an entirely different answer of corruption. It never even attempts to answer these sorts of things.
The message is just change. The message isn't how to change or what to change, it's just change.
Which is the most obvious and shallow message you could possibly have.
And potentially self-destructive, too, because just change is...
Which is part of, like, I think it's a really good jumping off point to Shin Megami Tensei 4.
Yes, alright, let's go.
Because Shin Megami Tensei 4 is a game of how dangerous unchecked change can be.
It's a game about how dangerous unchecked change can be that also illustrates how dangerous unchecked, what's the word, stability or stagnation can be.
Yeah.
Because you have, like, Mikado and Tokyo that are... Okay, massive spoilers again. You have Mikado and Tokyo, which are these two worlds that are, like, really tightly controlled. Nothing is allowed to change. And they're being opposed by another force that wants the complete opposite. They want everything out. Mm-hmm. And both sides are making their arguments, and both sides have, like, their kind of pros and cons, I guess. Like, they say, like, we're safe in Mikado because the samurai are literally killing everything that challenges, you know, the higher ups ideas and stuff. And it's like, yeah, you're safe, but you're basically in a gigantic prison. And then you have
Yeah.
like the chaos guys that are like, we're gonna throw everything out. Just all stability is gone. And it's like, hmm. And everyone's gonna run free and do whatever they want, and it will result in horrible massive death.
Yeah.
And then
Ex-
the parts where you go through the other worlds to like the world of total order and the world of total chaos are like, I guess they're a bit ham-fisted, but they're presented pretty well overall, I would say.
mhm. Yeah. The biggest problem of those times is you don't get to spend enough time in each of those worlds.
Yeah, you can go back, but that all you're doing then is just side quests.
Yeah. But like in general, like what confuses me so much about Persona 5 is that in a lot
Sorry,
of
what?
ways what confuses me about Persona 5 is that it's largely a rejection of what Shin Megami Tensei 4 had to say. And I I'm trying to think about like something about like cuz Final is a weird case where it's not.
Final is really, really weird, and it's a reason like this I wanted to have a talk with you about
Mhm.
specifically four versus final because it
Yeah.
felt like four was like a really big talks about like these big themes and messages about like like the extremists fighting each other and the damage that both sides cause in pursuit of what they
Well,
think
it's not
is
just that.
better.
It's how easily people can be extremed when posed against other extremes.
I mean, like the samurai come down from Mikado to Tokyo, and they're like, "This is the unclean ones' country," and it
Yeah.
takes them like a while before they even start calling them humans, and they're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, you're the heretics, right?" And they're like, "What are you talking about? Like, who are you people?"
Yeah, like the culture clash of Shin Megami Tensei 4 is probably one of my favorite like game moments, like in Shin Megami Tensei in general.
Yeah,
Like I like Final and 4 for completely different reasons. Well, Final is
yeah.
definitely not as thematically strong as
Final
4 is.
four final is so weird because four final is like an action anime. It's like a
Yeah.
standard anime, which is fun in its own right. But it feels so strange to be coming from the
I
same
actually
series that was making
this is
such a
actually
big
interesting.
splash.
I think we're because okay, Final and Persona 5 in a lot of ways share similar problems in that they both don't really have much to say. Like as
Yeah,
Shin Megami Tensei games, like Persona is all about this Jungian psychology. Shin Megami Tensei is about
yeah,
this criticism of religion.
yeah,
Where Shin Megami Tensei 4 Final, okay, maybe it's got criticism it's got the religious criticism in there, but it's not really, it doesn't really have any real messages. But Final doesn't have the pretense of wanting to say anything. Like
yeah.
Final is incredibly honest about its motives going throughout the game.
It's
It's
it's it's
it's
an anime.
it's an anime. It's a fun romp in the 4 world with it from a different perspective.
You have the love interest, the little sister, the comic relief, the big sister, the bromance, the the
And
the buddy
I'll
partner,
say
the
this,
guy with a stick up his
like
ass.
4 Final is a lot more fun of a story than Persona 5 is.
Yeah, it has a lot more of a cheery kind of attitude, which is why it gets super weird when it gets super dark.
But also that makes the dark moments feel even darker because of the cheerier moments.
I'm really
4 like
sorry to say this, but like that one scene again, massive spoilers. That one scene where like your father dies was kind of undermined slightly because the voice acting of one character was really bad. He was
I
like,
mean
I was like, and it's also kind of frustrating because the voice acting was pretty good up to that point in the game and after that point too. But the guy's like, "Oh my gosh, so much blood, no!" And I'm
okay,
like, come on, do another take.
Shin Megami Tensei voice acting can be so hit or miss.
Oh yeah,
I
I
love
thought Tayama's voice actor was great.
yeah, I love
I
that
don't
like
like
in
the
4
character, but I thought
okay,
Tayama's voice actor got him
I,
really good.
I just love how in Shin Megami Tensei 4 the boat guy is just Yosuke.
Yeah, the boat guy is just Yosuke. This is the parallel universe to Persona 4, where Yosuke never left Tokyo to start a branded Juness, and then the missiles came, and then he became a hunter.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's one of my favorite little things. But
Yo,
a-
you want to cross the
anyways,
boat?
anyways, like I wouldn't like Persona 5 wouldn't bother me so much if it doubled down in its fun, goofy Phantom Thief atmosphere, but it has this air of self-importance and like there is no point in the game where they're just having fun, because even when they're having fun, it's an edgy mess.
Persona 5 is the perfect game for me because it's a game that, much like me, has a lot of things it wants to say, but then just stumbles through all of it and never successfully makes a point.
So that's why you're the biggest Persona 5 fan.
I would say I am, honestly. Even though in this entire video I still have not been able to properly explain the shit I like about it.
Well, I think...
You know what I was going to go off on a tangent about? Persona
What?
5 is the best bedroom in the series. Yeah, that's
Okay,
a
that's fair, yeah.
that's a weird statement to make, but it's
I
like
agree.
in 4, you had a bedroom that was, kind of your own. In 3, that bedroom didn't mean shit. In 5, that bedroom was yours to
Okay,
like
okay, so-
customize, to change, to buy TVs, to
Okay.
buy game consoles, DVD players, laptops, to mess around with stuff. It was like the plant, the chair, the things. That bedroom was like your safe space in this world of oppression. It was your place where you could go to be yourself. And when the Phantom Thieves are all joined there, it was like sharing your safe space. It showed how close you were. And I'm like, there is so much symbolism I can get from a fucking bedroom in Persona 5. And there's so little symbolism I can get from the rest of the game.
Okay, so
Someone
let me-
fucked up something.
Going back to positives in Persona 5, I guess, is what we've talked about how bad like the setting is.
Yes.
Persona 5 set pieces are amazing.
Persona 5 does so many. Persona 5 is kind of frustrating because when I talk about the Persona series, what I'm talking like, people have a phrase like you can't see the big picture, and I'm like, when it comes to Persona, you want to look at the smaller pieces of the big picture because the small pieces put together the big picture. And in Persona 5, it's like what I was saying before. It's like I said, bad as an opinion is a conclusion. It's not a descriptor. Bad is the opinion that you create from all of the millions of different things that contribute into your opinion. And I'm like, I would say Persona 5 on the whole is bad, but I'm like looking at the big picture and I'm with like a big magnifying glass and I'm going, that's good. That's good.
Well,
That's good. That's
okay,
good.
let me
This
let
is
me
bad.
let me actually rephrase this.
Yeah.
Persona 5 is a good game. Persona 5 is a bad Persona game. Persona
well,
Persona
I
5.
mean-
I mean,
See, we can talk about what if Persona 5 wasn't a Persona game.
okay, but not even
is.
just no, but like I mean, let me Persona, like, and I'm talking about specifically Persona 5 as a game is a good game. Persona 5 as from a big picture standpoint, like I'm trying to think how to put this.
Well, the thing about that is when you say Persona 5 as a standalone is a good game, is that the thing is that, like, when people say, oh, like, don't judge it as a game in the series, judge it as a thing on its own, it's like, well, number one, like, why should I? It literally is
Persona-
selling itself as
Okay,
a
also
Persona game.
That argument doesn't work because
Yeah.
Persona is a game that thrives as being a part of its series. It's very much Persona,
Yeah.
like the Persona games are sort of a narrative upon themselves, and they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
And like I guess it's the same thing with Mortal Kombat. It's like, okay, you can look at Persona 5 as its own, and it does a lot of good things within itself. Like,
Well, here's another reason why I can't say that, where I can't think that way, because a lot of my positives about Persona 5, and this will probably make things real rocky. A
Oh,
lot
boy.
of my positives of Persona 5 are from when Persona 5 is being a Persona game.
yeah, that's
Like
actually true.
when I talk about An and Ryuji's relationship and how much I feel like the two of them have a genuine like romance together. What I'm not talking about like massive scenes of them like eating spaghetti together. I'm talking about a connected series throughout the entire game of like little details and things that they do with one another that like portrays this idea in my mind of this true relationship. In Kamoshida's Palace, or before then, they get into like this weird text talk about like this dolphin and how An like lent Ryuji this money for like the bus fare, and that like Ryuji got this dolphin for his mother and stuff of that nature. In An's social link, she actually calls Ryuji to help her exercise, and Ryuji, without a question, comes and does it. And he even makes a remark too, where An's like, "I gotta work out to be attractive" or something, and Ryuji's like, "Well, I think you're hot." Like, oh. I mean, he doesn't say that. He's like, "I think you're wasting your time," but you get a sense he's like, "Oh, I think you're hot." there's a part at the very beginning too where he's talking about his relationship with Shido and An and how he knew them in middle school and how he's like I don't know what they're doing with Kamoshida. They're not the kind of girls that would do the stuff, and it's like again showing his insight into what he thinks of them. Like the part 2 at the very end of the game, like when Ryuji's like, "Don't worry, I'll get the boat and save us." When like the big thing is dying, who calls out to cheer Ryuji on? On and only on. And when Ryuji seems to die, who screams for him? On and only on. They're always in scenes. They're always in scenes with each other. And I think like the scene that really kind of like got to me, like there's a scene when they're in Hawaii, when they're like in the room together with you, and there's like and An is talking about romance stuff, and she goes immediately to Ryuji. She wants to know what kind of girl Ryuji is into. And like I think the scene that was probably my favorite scene, or the scene that like really kind of spoke to me in a weird way, is the beach scene of all scenes. It was the beach scene where like, you know, Ryuji has a popsicle stick in his mouth, and then the girls come out in bikinis, and like the stick goes up because haha boner and shit. And then like, what does An do? She doesn't cover her chest and go like, "Eek, pervert." She laughs and she points at him, and then she teases him about it. And she's like, "You like what you see?" And I'm like, that is so good.
But actually, not like you mentioning that also kind of highlights how poorly incorporated the rest of the cast is.
Yeah.
Like, on Ryuji and Morgana, like, being that they're all like introduced at the start and whatnot, all are sort of written around each other.
Yeah.
And their dynamic, especially like, even like the Ryuji Morgana dynamic, makes sense at the start of the game.
At the start of the game, it absolutely should have fallen off at some point.
Like, it almost comes off as like if the first palace of Persona 5 is really carefully written, like the first like chapter.
The first palace of Persona 5 was made absolutely first, and then the budget ran out.
Well, no, it doesn't feel like the budget ran out. It felt like the writer, like the director, wrote that stuff first to get like approval to continue on with the game.
Yeah.
And then realized he was in over his head, but it was too late because he already got approval.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it's a thing I noticed about like a lot of games, and like for as much as I know I'm bringing up Devil May Cry 5 again, but it's like Devil May Cry 5 and Persona 5 have a lot in common on 2 fronts too, where it's like their level 1s are really, really detailed and seem to have a lot of thought put into them, and the games kind of become a little bit more simple as they go on, unfortunately. Now, let me stress too, I really love Devil May Cry 5. I think it's a very good game. But it's like Kamoshida's palace has like a whole bunch of stuff: secret doors, secret rooms, key collecting puzzles. You go in like multiple times. You go in once by accident. Akira gets his persona. You go in again, and like Ryuji tries to like get the faces of the volleyball team members so that he can like try to settle this without having to invade the palace and non-violently. You know, actually try to make a social reform, but that gets stifled. Bravo, Persona 5.
Well,
but like, yeah. I don't know. And then like,
but then from there, the dungeon design just sort of falls out. It just feels like it's.
Yeah. You know what they should have done? They should have had a Phantom Thief kind of aesthetic where you have to steal their heart. They should have thrown the calling card in the garbage can, and they should have made the palaces you exploring like this corrupt person's mind and stuff and finding out why they're bad, and then to get the treasure, instead of like putting out a calling card, you get society to like you build arguments and you get society to like turn on them and make them feel uncomfortable, like, "Hey, wait a second, you're exploiting us. Hey, wait a minute, you're abusing minors and shit." And they're like, "No, I'm not. What are you talking about?" And then they get like defensive and their heart gets weak, and then Morgana's like, "Now we can run in and take their treasure."
Yeah, but
have an actual social reform.
No, but see,
that still wouldn't have been very.
But like, and here's they could have, they could have had the calling card. It's just if the calling card wasn't using this mechanic, because the reason why they have the calling card is because that's a Phantom Thief trope.
Yeah.
Like if they wanted to have the Phantom Thieves, they have to have a calling card. But the calling card didn't need to be this big mechanic like that. It could have been. They could have still sent out the calling card, but it didn't need to be the key to get to the treasure.
Yeah.
But it feels like and this might be because of I actually do feel like the biggest, like one of the hugest problems in Persona 5's development was the change of direction. Because
Yeah.
once you change direction once like that, you don't get another change of direction. You don't get another do again.
Yeah.
I don't know how good the backpacking Persona 5 would have been.
I'm
But
sure with the same director as the Persona 5 we got, I absolutely would have had a lot of shit to say about it, I admit, but
well, I mean, like, isn't the Persona 5 director the same guy who directed 3 and 4?
yeah, but that's the same guy who said that he'd rather have action scenes than character development, so
That's fair.
I'm kind of shaky on him. And I'm questioning too, is you say he's the same director, and I'm like,
I mean,
well, is it,
I don't know. I was asking you. I don't know if that's actually the case.
oh, is it? I'll have to Google it later.
Because it's the same. Because 3, 4, and 5 are the same writer. I don't know if they're the same director.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry I kept derailing your points. You wanted to talk about a lot of stuff.
Oh, there's too much to talk about Persona 5. I'm already starting to crash a bit. We're already like an hour and a half.
Yeah,
recording
we're running
almost.
out of time. And that's the thing too,
Yeah.
is that this episode, it feels like it's over, but I'm like, I haven't even. This was supposed to be the episode where we talk about how much we like, or the things we like about it before we tear it down. We bypassed the talking about things we liked about it, went to tearing it down, and then came back to the
Well,
conversation
you know
of
what?
things we like about it.
I think what you need is you need someone who disagrees with you to talk to you about Persona 5.
You know,
You need. I think I'm already too woke on Persona 5's issues that I think you do like Persona 5 more than I do. I completely I
Persona
can see at that
5
point.
Persona 5 drives me crazy because I'm like looking at this and I'm saying you didn't have to do very much to make this game something truly special, and you still fucked it up, Atlas.
Well, that's the other thing. It's like Persona 4 feels like a few steps away of being something truly special, like probably one of the greatest JRPGs of all time. But it fumbles it in like the most odd ways they possibly could have.
Yeah.
It's like they're like the problems they make seem like the obvious things that you wouldn't make problems about like with.
Yeah.
Like there is so much potential for good that is just dropped for whatever like production issues or writing issues they've had. Depending on like, because as I was saying, like the big problem with them changing gears is that's a lot of lost development and writing time that they had for the game. They probably had to scrap a lot of work before then, and then you don't get the same amount of time to work on a game if you've had a waste if you had already had a few years of wasted time working on one game.
Yeah.
So
Persona
like
5. Ah, jeez. I mean, I think about a
Yeah.
lot of stuff with 5 too. You know what's like kind of weird about 5? And I admit,
What?
maybe I'm just really cynical, but it's like when I look at the main characters, your protagonists who you follow the entire game with, I just think about how much I don't like any of them at all. And
Oh,
then
yeah, I hate them all.
I think about that in comparison to okay, you might find this weird, but like while I'm mostly okay with the cast of Shin Megami Tensei 4 Final, I thought tonally they were all kind of messy. Like
Oh yeah, definitely.
there was a part where like one of the teammates gets kidnapped, and then the main characters are like not 2 minutes later cracking jokes, and then a guy jumps out of your smartphone and he's like, "You realize we're all fucked. It's all your fault, and you're all just cracking jokes about it. What the hell is wrong with you?" And then they're like, "Asshole," and I'm like, "Yeah, like you're way too jokey." Like the cast is way too jokey, and the fact that they keep shitting on Navarre is like, okay, don't get me wrong, Navarre is an asshole, but like even when
Navarre's
he
shit on
does
because
good,
I know.
at the
Like
end of the
Navarre's
game,
just there to be shed on.
he's just there to be made fun of, and it's like at the start of the game that is perfect because he has this haughty attitude and he's super arrogant despite being super weak, and characters kind of like talk him down. But then he gets a little bit more self-aware as the game goes on and becomes like more rounded as a character, but they don't treat him any differently. And I'm like, I get and I'm like, it's weird because I don't get the sense these characters are friends. I get the sense that someone is trying to write a friendship. And
Well,
then
I
you
also
have
get-
like Persona 5 where you're told the characters are friends, but they're constantly being overly
Well,
mean to one another.
I also get the feeling with Persona, what works in Shin Megami Tensei 4 Finals, like favor, and this is sort of a last point thing as we got to wrap up.
Well, I
But-
wanted to just also talk about like 4
I
and
know.
Strange Journey real quick before you wrap
I know.
up.
Okay, so I'll say my last flaw, then you can say your last one.
All right.
What works in Final's favor with the friendship is that the world's fucked. They all know it's fucked, and sometimes, like, and because you don't believe, like, where Persona 5, it's like you believe that they could be friends with anybody else than these people. Where in Shin Megami Tensei 4 Final, it's like, okay, this is a really awkward friendship, but who else are they gonna be friends with?
I guess so. I bring
Like,
this up. I say this because like I don't need a friendship to just be characters constantly just complimenting each other like Mighty Morphing Power Rangers and shit.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, it's like they're too juvenile in the face of things that aren't funny, and they're too mean in situations where they shouldn't be. And then I bring up Shin Megami Tensei 4 because those are all teenagers, and I'm like, you get a real sense. You see the entire rise and fall of that friendship from when they don't know each other at all to their adventure in becoming friends to the friendship falling apart. You see the whole thing. And then you have Strange Journey, where you also get an interesting kind of friendship because everyone is screwed from the get-go. Everyone is on edge. And it starts as a professional relationship where they're like, we need to survive, and eventually becomes, holy shit, everything is fucked. You're all I can rely on. Every one of you, like we need each other. Like, oh my god. And then you have like Zelen and Jimenez too, who are like kind of like in the same boat and kind of jump off the boat too for like different reasons. Where Jimenez is kind of like he always kind of is like pushing himself away from the team while always getting dragged back into it.
Well,
he doesn't want to be a part of the team, but he's also developing these feelings.
What makes Jimenez interesting is he's sort of like a more realistic example of what Ryuji would be in real life.
Kinda.
Like Jimenez is the butt monkey who everybody shits on, and Jimenez doesn't trust like other people, and then because of that, he feels ostracized from the group and he leaves.
He feels ostracized from the group, but wants to be a part of it. And then when he gets his demon powers, he just leaves. And then Zelen is another case too, where she says that she wants to be part of the group. She's like, I want to be part of the group. I want to help people. But she feels a weird disconnect from the group, like something isn't right. And then she joins the Angels. And she's like, I see now. The reason why I didn't want to be part of the group was because the group was wrong. And then you're kind of left, and you're with the rest of the group, and you're all like, we don't really know what to do, but we all know we can trust each other. And so you get a real sense of a friendship there.
But this has been Bros in a Landfill. Just a landfill. Thanks for watching.
The real Bros in a Landfill was the friends we made along the way.
Anyways, thanks for listening. A quick announcement for anybody watching. We're on Anchor, Spotify, anywhere that Anchor publishes things. We'll be putting things in the show notes. I've got a Twitter announcement coming up. You'll probably see that beforehand. But yeah, we're not just on YouTube anymore. Please support, like, share, subscribe, and thanks for sticking around with us for
47 episode.
Yeah, almost a year, man. We've been doing this for almost a year.
We're almost episode 50.
Woo! And we finally did the Persona 5 episode.
Yeah, stay tuned for when we do it again.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for listening to us. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And this has been Bros in a Landfill, signing off.
The real bros are the friends we made along the way.